What if the laws of nature suddenly stopped obeying themselves? Imagine blindness vanishing with a single touch, or the sea itself being silenced by a word. These aren't just myths from an old book. They were witnessed by crowds, recorded by historians, and believed by people who were willing to die for what they saw. If you think you already know the story of Jesus' miracles, I invite you to think again. Because what you're about to discover could change the way you see faith, science, and even yourself. Stay with me until the end, because one of these miracles might reveal something that has been missing in your own life all along. It all began at a celebration, a wedding in a small village called Cana. Joy filled the air, music echoed through the streets, and laughter carried into the night. But then disaster struck. The wine ran out. In a culture where hospitality was sacred, this was a moment of deep humiliation. Mary, Jesus' mother, turns to him and whispers, "They have no more wine." He answers, "My hour has not yet come." And yet compassion moves him. He instructs the servants to fill 6 large stone jars with water. Moments later, what they draw out is not water, but the finest wine anyone had ever tasted. There were no flashy words, no visible magic, just a quiet transformation. The message from this very first miracle was clear. Jesus doesn't just change situations. He changes the very essence of things. He turns emptiness into abundance, the ordinary into the divine. Soon, the miracles spread beyond the quiet corners of a wedding feast. Word traveled of a teacher who healed the blind, made the lame walk, and restored the sick with a touch or a simple command. A man born blind felt the sunlight on his face for the very first time. A paralyzed man, lowered on a mat through a crowded house, was told, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And he did. A woman who had bled for 12 long years pushed through the crowd just to touch the edge of his robe. Instantly, she was healed. No medicine, no ritual, just faith meeting divine power. Modern science can explain spontaneous recovery, but not sight created where there were no working eyes, or strength restored to muscles long dead. These miracles weren't just about healing bodies. They were about restoring dignity, showing that compassion itself has power. Then came the storm. Night had fallen over the Sea of Galilee. Waves crashed, winds screamed, and seasoned fishermen were terrified for their lives. But Jesus was asleep. His disciples shook him awake, crying out, "Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing?" He stood, faced the chaos, and spoke 3 simple words. "Peace, be still." Instantly, the wind stopped. The waves sank into a glassy silence. The disciples whispered among themselves, "Who is this man, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Nature itself seemed to recognize its creator. This wasn't just about calming a storm on the water. It was about calming the storms raging within our human hearts. Days later, thousands followed him into the wilderness. They were hungry for his words, but soon they were just plain hungry. 5,000 men, plus women and children, and all they had were 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. Jesus took them, gave thanks, broke the bread, and began passing it around. Incredibly, the food multiplied until everyone had eaten their fill. When it was all over, they collected 12 baskets of leftovers. Logic completely collapses at this point. Food doesn't just multiply itself. But this wasn't a math problem. It was a profound lesson. When our human resources run out, that's precisely where divine abundance begins. One night, another miracle would defy not just hunger but gravity itself. The disciples were again at sea, struggling against the wind. Suddenly, they saw a figure walking toward them on the water. Terror froze them. They thought it was a ghost. Until a familiar voice called out, "It is I, do not be afraid." Peter, ever impulsive, stepped out of the boat and for a moment walked on water too. But when fear replaced his faith, he began to sink. Jesus reached out, caught him, and asked, "Why did you doubt?" This miracle wasn't about showing off divine power. It was a mirror reflecting our own human weakness. Fear makes us sink. Faith keeps us standing, even on impossible ground. And then came the miracle that shattered every human boundary, the boundary of life itself. A man named Lazarus had died. 4 days had passed. The tomb was sealed, and hope was buried with him. Jesus arrived late. Too late, it seemed. Lazarus's sister Martha told him, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus replied with one of the most powerful statements ever made, "I am the resurrection and the life." Then he stood before the tomb and called out, "Lazarus, come out!" And the impossible happened. The man who was dead walked out, still wrapped in his grave clothes. Death had been reversed. Every heartbeat since has echoed that miracle. For doctors, death is the final line. For Jesus, it was just a doorway. But not all of his miracles were so dramatic. Some were quiet, almost hidden. 10 lepers, outcasts rejected by society, shouted from a distance, "Jesus, have mercy on us." He told them to go show themselves to the priests. And as they went, they were healed. Only one came back to thank him. A Roman centurion begged for his servant to be healed, and Jesus healed him from miles away, marveling, "I have not found such great faith in all of Israel." Children climbed onto his lap, the broken were embraced, and demons fled with a single word. Every single act carried the same message. Power and love are not separate. They are one and the same. The kingdom of God wasn't coming someday in the future. It was already breaking through right there in the lives being restored. Yet every miracle pointed to one that was greater than all the others. The moment when the impossible became eternal, betrayed by one of his own, beaten, mocked, and nailed to a cross. The sky darkened, the earth trembled, and the Son of God died. For 3 days, there was only silence. Then, a heartbeat, an empty tomb, a stone rolled away. "He is not here," an angel said. "He is risen." No one ever found the body because death couldn't hold him. No eyewitness ever recanted their story, even when facing persecution. The resurrection wasn't the end of the miracles. It was the beginning of all hope. 2,000 years later, humanity is still searching for miracles. We look for them in hospitals, in moments of incredible survival, in acts of unexpected kindness. We call them coincidences, fate, or just good luck. But maybe the real miracle isn't just what happens to us, but what happens in us. Every time someone forgives when it's easier to hate, that's a miracle. Every time someone chooses hope over despair, that's resurrection power at work. Every time someone gives generously when they have little to spare, that's divine multiplication. Jesus' miracles weren't meant to impress skeptics or build his fame. They were signs, living proof that heaven had broken into earth. They whispered a single, powerful truth. You are seen, you are loved, and with God, nothing is impossible. You don't need to walk on water to believe. You just need to be willing to step out of your fear. Maybe your life feels like that wedding where the wine ran out, empty, disappointing, and just ordinary. Maybe you're in the middle of a storm right now, wondering if anyone even cares. Or maybe something precious in your life feels dead and gone. The same voice that spoke to the wind and the waves still speaks today. Peace, be still. The same hands that multiplied bread can multiply what's left of your hope. And the same words that called Lazarus back to life can call you out of whatever tomb has kept you bound. Faith doesn't begin when everything makes perfect sense. It begins when we dare to believe that there's more to life than what we can see. The miracles of Jesus weren't just moments in history, they're invitations, still open to you today. If this story touched you, don't let it just fade away. Comment below and tell us, which miracle speaks most to your heart right now? Click like to help this message reach more people who need to hear a word of hope. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next extraordinary story we explore together. Every miracle Jesus performed wasn't just about power. It was about love. And that love is still changing lives, including yours.